Hey there. Tonight, you'll live the life of a samurai. Not the warrior from stories, but the real one. Born into duty, trained before he could speak, obedient long before he understood why. There's no glory waiting at the end. Only routine, silence, and the slow passing of years. So dim the light, and try to follow, from the first bow to the last breath. It begins in rural Japan, sometime around the year 1660. The wars are over. The swords remain. Your father owns no land. He serves a lord whose face he has seen only twice and whose name is spoken with caution. Your mother keeps the fire low to save wood and washes your swaddling clothes in the same water she boils rice in. You are not born in a castle, or even near one. You are born in a wooden house with no ceiling, only beams, where smoke from the cooking fire curls into the roof and settles into the straw. Chickens come and go through the doorway. A dog sleeps beside the hearth. You arrive in the night, without ceremony. No one calls it a blessing. You do not cry loud enough to wake the village. There is no priest, no midwife, only your mother, sweating and silent, and your grandmother, who doesn't look you in the eye. She wipes you clean, folds you into cloth, and places you beside the wall. You are not the first. You may not be the last. But already, the shape of your life has been drawn. Your name is chosen from a short list. A name that is easy to pronounce, hard to confuse, and fits with the others in the family. No one celebrates it. Your father registers your birth with a clerk who doesn't ask to see you. You are recorded, filed, and forgotten by the local magistrate. For the first weeks, you are swaddled tightly and left to lie still. Crying is discouraged. Movement is discouraged. Attention is discouraged. Your mother rocks you without singing. Your father doesn't hold you. There is nothing cruel in this, only the necessity of not becoming too soft. Food is limited. Blankets are shared. The family eats from one bowl. When your grandmother feeds you, she uses her fingers, dipping into porridge and pressing it into your mouth, careful not to waste even a grain. At night, the wind moves through the cracks in the wood, and mice rustle in the corners. When you shiver, no one comes to tuck you in. Warmth is not expected. You will need to learn early how to sit still and wait. The village is a flat place, caught between the fields and the river. All houses look the same. You grow before you can walk, watching from the floor, while your older brothers train with wooden sticks in the yard. When you make noise, your mother shushes you with a gentle hand that turns firm if you don't listen. There are rules you do not understand yet, but you already feel them. You learn not to interrupt, not to reach, not to ask. When guests come, rarely, you are carried to the back room and told not to make a sound. Most days are the same. Someone fetches water. Someone brings in firewood. Someone is beaten for carelessness, and no one speaks of it the next day. You are not mistreated. You are simply shaped, quietly, efficiently, without excess. When your father returns from the castle, he does not greet you. He removes his sandals, bows to the family altar, and eats in silence. That's how you learn what matters. Not words, not questions, just obedience, just form. Before you are even old enough to stand alone, your future is assumed. You will follow your father, who followed his. You will train with the same sticks, kneel on the same mats, wear the same patched clothes. You will not travel far unless ordered. You will not speak much unless required. Your grandfather once served in a real battle, decades ago, and sometimes speaks of it in mutters, but only when drunk, and only to himself. You hear the word loyalty before you understand what it means. You hear the word duty before you can pronounce it. Your place in the world is not taught to you. It is pressed into you. Through daily repetition, through silence, through watching, you are born into a household where nothing is wasted. Not food, not time, not breath. You are not special. You are not expected to be. But you are watched closely. Because one day you will represent this house, and you must not bring shame. By the time you are 3, the house expects more from you. You're no longer carried from room to room or left to nap by the fire. Now you are placed on a flat mat near the low table and told to stay there. Your legs are folded beneath you in a position that feels wrong, tight, stiff, unnatural, but you are not allowed to shift. You are told to sit still, not for minutes, but for as long as it takes the grown men to finish speaking. At first, your legs go numb. Then they burn. Then they stop feeling like yours. You whimper once and your mother looks at you without blinking. You learn quickly. If you cry, you are removed, not to be comforted, but to be scolded. If you fidget, your grandfather sighs, and the weight of that sigh lands heavier than any hand. You are not punished with violence. That would be too direct. Instead, you are taught to disappoint slowly by being seen as weak, and that's worse. So you adjust. You breathe slower. You stop moving. You begin to learn how to disappear inside your body. Most of the time, you don't understand what they're saying. Words pass over you like wind, formal, distant, adult things. They speak of names you do not recognize, places you've never seen. They speak of harvests, taxes, weather, the Lord's new decree, the neighbor's son who shamed his family. None of it is meant for you. But you are made to sit and hear it, because listening is part of learning, and learning is part of surviving. Sometimes your father includes you in a sentence to test you. You are expected to respond with a bow, not a word. Other times, no one acknowledges you for hours. You sit until your knees shake. You sit while your stomach growls. You sit until your eyelids flutter. When you sway too far, your mother pinches your side, sharp and quick, beneath the table, and you straighten. There are no toys, no stories, no exceptions. The floor is your lesson. The room is your teacher. The silence is your test. At night, you are allowed to lie down. But even then you must fold your clothes, bow to the altar, and listen to your elders speak again while you wait for sleep. Sometimes you hear your name in their voices, never with pride, only worry or expectation. Your grandmother says you need stronger legs. Your mother says you daydream too much. Your father says nothing. You memorize these judgments without understanding them. You lie still in the dark, practicing how to keep your hands folded on your stomach. You count breaths until your mind drifts. Some nights the fire dies early and cold settles in. You do not call out. You pull your sleeves over your fingers and wait for morning. When the rooster cries, you rise. No one wakes you. No one praises you for being quiet. That's just what's expected. You've started to understand that silence isn't absence. It's effort. It's what proves you belong. By spring, you can sit through a full meal without needing to move. You don't look around the room anymore. You stare straight ahead. When someone enters, you bow. When spoken to, you lower your eyes. You still don't understand why this matters, but you know it does. One day, your cousin arrives from another village. He's older, louder, quicker to laugh. He shifts constantly on his mat and touches things without permission. After dinner, your grandfather calls you to his side. He doesn't smile. He only says, "He could learn from you." That night, your legs ache, but your chest feels warm. Not with pride exactly, but with permission to keep trying. It's the first time your silence is treated like strength. The first time stillness feels like something you own. You are 3 years old, maybe a little older. Already you've begun the most important lesson: how to hold yourself like nothing hurts. You are 6 when they place a wooden sword in your hands. It's too long, too heavy, too smooth in the wrong places. It slips when you grip it and stings when it strikes. The first time it hits your wrist, your arm goes numb. You don't cry because you've already learned not to, but your eyes sting and your breath catches. Your grandfather watches without speaking. He nods when you stand back up and resume the stance. The ground is dry and uneven. You stand in the yard behind the house, facing your cousin, who is 2 years older and already used to the feel of wood against bone. He doesn't smile when he strikes you. He doesn't go easy. That's part of the training. You're not being taught how to fight. You're being taught how to endure. You fall. You rise. You fall again. You rise again. No one claps. No one corrects your form. They only watch to see if you stop trying. At first, your muscles don't cooperate. Your wrists twist the wrong way. Your feet slide when they should grip. Your arms grow sore after only a few minutes. But the sword is not put down. When your body weakens, your father adjusts your elbows without speaking. When you move too quickly, your uncle taps your knee with his own shin. Training is not a lesson. It is an expectation. It happens every morning, whether you slept well or not, whether your feet are blistered or whole. You swing the sword at a post until your arms tremble, then swing 10 more times. You copy the movements your cousin shows you, then repeat them in the air, slower, more controlled. The wood bruises your fingers, the splinters tear at your palms. You do not complain. If you bleed, you wrap the hand and keep moving. No one asks if you want to train. Wanting is not part of it. There is only doing. By the end of the first week, you can hold the sword without dropping it. By the end of the first month, you can swing it 10 times without collapsing. You are not graceful. You are not strong. But you are beginning to understand what is expected. Each strike has a rhythm. Each step must land on firm ground. You memorize the angles, the grip, the breathing. You do not yet know what the moves are called. The names don't matter. Only the repetition does. Sometimes, after training, you soak your hands in cold water, watching your fingers tremble. Your grandmother pats your shoulder and puts rice in your bowl. That is the only reward, a full portion eaten in silence, while your legs throb and your back refuses to straighten. You eat without complaint. You sleep without dreams. And in the morning, you bow, take the sword, and begin again. One day, your cousin misses a block and your wooden blade hits his ribs. He grunts, drops his stance, and glares at you. For a moment, you freeze, unsure if you've done something wrong. Your grandfather says nothing. Then, quietly, he says, "Good." It's the first word of approval you've heard in days. Your cousin nods. You both return to position. Nothing more is said. You don't ask when the training will end. You understand now that it won't. Not next month, not next year. This is what mornings are now. Sweat, bruises, silence. You are 6, and the sword is still too heavy, but no one offers to carry it for you. You are 8 when your father tells you to dress carefully and follow him. The morning is still dark when you wake, the house colder than usual. Your mother helps you into clothes you wear only a few times a year, clean, stiff, uncomfortable. Your hands fumble with the sash. She reties it without a word. You eat quickly, kneeling at the edge of the room while your father finishes his tea. He doesn't look at you, but you watch his every movement. When he rises, you rise. When he steps into his sandals, you do the same. Outside, the path is wet from last night's rain. You walk one step behind him, not beside. He doesn't speak, and neither do you. This is not an outing. This is not a lesson. This is duty. You don't know where you're going, but it doesn't matter. You follow. That's the rule. The castle is smaller than you imagined. Not the great stronghold from stories, but a modest structure behind a tall wall, guarded by 2 men who nod and let your father pass. You keep your eyes down. Inside, the floors are polished, the air full of incense, the rooms quiet in a way that feels heavy. Your father kneels in a room with 3 other men and waits. You kneel beside him, unsure what to do with your hands. They are too large to hide and too small to fold confidently. You settle them flat on your thighs. The men speak in low tones about rice, borders, rain. You don't understand most of it, but you learn to listen anyway. When they mention names, your father nods. When they pause, he says just enough. You are not introduced. You are not addressed. You are background. A symbol of obedience, nothing more. And that's exactly what you're supposed to be. Hours pass in silence, broken only by murmurs and the rustle of sleeves. Your knees ache, but you don't shift. Your mouth dries, but you don't swallow loudly. The sun rises slowly through the paper windows, and the dust in the air begins to glow. When the meeting ends, your father bows deeply and rises. You do the same. Outside, you put his sandals in place. He nods once, and that's your only signal to walk. On the way home, he says nothing, but you can feel that this was a test. And because you didn't fail, you will do it again. That evening, your grandmother refolds your outer robe and places it back in its wrapping cloth. She doesn't ask how it went. She only says, "It will be more often now." And she's right. The ceremonies become part of your world. Once every few weeks, sometimes more. Always early, always long, always the same routine. You begin to recognize faces. You learn who arrives first, who speaks longest, who commands quiet without needing to raise a voice. You learn the hierarchy not through titles, but through body language. Who bows deeper, who waits longer, who stands only after someone else has left. No one teaches you these things. You absorb them through repetition. At home, no one asks you what you saw, but your grandfather watches you more carefully now, correcting the angle of your bow, the timing of your steps. You are not being prepared for greatness. You are being prepared for invisibility. The precise, silent kind that matters in rooms where a wrong gesture can shame a house. You are 8. And every motion you make now belongs not to you, but to your name. The scrolls smell of dust and smoke. You sit cross-legged on the wooden floor of the small family altar room, back straight, eyes lowered, a worn text unrolled in front of you. The characters swim across the page like insects, familiar in shape but slippery in meaning. Your uncle sits beside you, silent, his finger tracing the same line over and over until you learn not to stumble. You are not taught to read for joy. You are taught to read because it is expected. The text is not a storybook. It is a sutra, written in a hand so precise it looks carved. You do not understand what the words mean. You are not expected to, not yet. What matters is that you can pronounce them, that your tongue can move across their shapes without hesitation. The sound of the reading is more important than the sense. Rhythm, breath, control. It is a lesson in obedience disguised as literacy. Your first mistake is too fast. The second, too slow. By the third, you learn to listen to the room more than to yourself. The mornings begin earlier now, before your hands touch the wooden sword, before you help sweep the yard. You are kneeling with your uncle, repeating passages from memory. At first, you think the repetition is meant to teach you the text, but in time you realize it is not about the text at all. It is about what your voice sounds like when it is tired, whether you can keep your tone steady after an hour of the same phrases, whether your bow is as deep at the end as it was at the beginning. You copy the strokes in a notebook with a brush made from horsehair. The ink seeps into the paper uneven, and your uncle corrects your hand not with words, but by placing his over yours. When you ask what the words mean, he ignores the question, not because it is forbidden, but because meaning comes later. First comes form. That is the rule, and you already know how important rules are. The Buddha does not need you to understand him. He only needs you to recite his name without stumbling. You begin to recognize certain characters, one for wind, one for silence, one for path. They start to appear in your thoughts at odd moments, carved behind your eyelids when you blink, floating in your breath when you sit still. Sometimes you find yourself mouthing lines from the sutra while you wait for the adults to finish talking, just to pass the time. Your father notices and says nothing, but the next day he brings you an older scroll with more complex passages. Your uncle tests you by leaving out the end of a line, forcing you to finish it. When you succeed, he nods once. When you fail, he nods the same. Praise and correction look the same on his face. There is comfort in that. Nothing you do will surprise him. You learn to keep your voice even, your hands clean, your back straight. You begin to see how every part of your body becomes part of the reading, and how the reading becomes part of everything else. One evening, during a family gathering, your grandfather points to the altar and tells you to recite. No warning, no preparation, just a quiet command in front of 5 adults who all stop what they're doing. Your heart races, but your feet carry you forward. You kneel, unfold the cloth, and begin. The first few words are shaky, but then your breath finds its place. The lines emerge from your mouth like they've been waiting. When you finish, no one claps, no one nods, but your grandfather pours you a second bowl of rice, and your uncle places a hand on your shoulder as you return to your seat. That night, you sleep with the scroll beside you, folded and tied, the string worn smooth from use. You do not know what it says, but you know what it means to them, that you can carry it without shame, that your voice, even if still young, has already begun to serve. At 10 years old, you no longer sleep in the same room as your parents. You are told that you are old enough now, and old enough means quiet enough. They clear a space near the rear entrance of the house. beside the small cabinet where firewood is kept, and lay down a thin mat. It smells faintly of mildew, and the straw beneath it is uneven. Beside your mat, another is already laid out, for the house servant who tends the animals and locks the doors. He is older than you, silent, and mostly faceless in your memory, though you've seen him every day of your life. You bow when you see him, and he bows in return, slightly less deeply. Now you sleep beside him. He does not speak. You do not ask questions. The house does not tolerate questions at night. You fold your robe carefully, lay down, and pull the cover over your shoulders. The room is dark, but not quiet. Wind creaks through the walls, the servant breathes audibly, and once in a while a rat scurries near the firewood cabinet. But inside your head, there is nothing. You've trained yourself not to think too loudly. You do not speak when you lie down. You do not speak when you rise. If the servant wakes before you, he lights the morning candle and leaves without a word. If you wake first, you sit in silence until he stirs, then bow slightly before going to your duties. The air is colder back here, away from the central hearth, but no one adjusts the bedding. You learn to sleep in a tight curl, knees to chest, arms folded in. When you shift in the night, you do it slowly, carefully, without rustling. The servant does not tell you anything about how to behave. He does not correct you. He does not need to. You know already that this arrangement is a kind of test. You are being watched, not with eyes, but with expectations. If you speak, you are not ready. If you complain, you are not ready. If you disturb the peace of the night, you do not yet belong to the household you were born into. But you do not fail. You do not even try not to fail. You simply stop needing to succeed. At first, you miss the sound of your father's quiet snoring from the main room, the warmth of sleeping near the family altar, the occasional half-whispered instructions from your mother before dawn. But you do not dwell on these things. Nostalgia is not a word in your mind yet, but you feel the outline of it like an itch behind the ribs. Instead of remembering, you focus on pattern. Fold the bedding, straighten the mat, bow to the candle, stand without sound. The days are long and structured, the nights shorter than they seem. Sometimes, when your eyes won't close, you recite the sutras under your breath, not for meaning, just for rhythm. They calm your chest. They anchor your breath. One night, the servant clears his throat softly after you finish a passage. It's not a criticism. It's not approval. It's simply a noise, and even that feels like a kind of message. I heard you. That is enough. No one asks how you sleep. No one asks whether you are cold or lonely or afraid. You are 10 years old, and in this household, that is old enough to be invisible at night. You do your chores without reminders, your studies without prompting. You train with the wooden sword, sit properly at every meal, bow at every threshold. At night, you return to your mat and lie down without sound. The silence is no longer something you obey. It is something you participate in. You become part of it, a shape in the dark that doesn't shift, a breath that doesn't interrupt. You do not dream often. When you do, the dreams are quiet. A hallway, a candle, a closed door. When you wake, the servant is gone or still sleeping, or watching the sky through the crack in the wall. You sit up, fold your mat, and move through the house without a sound. No one notices. That's how you know you're doing it right. You are 12 the first time they cut your hair in front of others. The strands fall silently onto the wooden floor as you kneel, bare from the waist up, arms resting on your thighs, eyes down. No one speaks. The blade is dull, but precise. Your uncle holds your head steady with one hand and works carefully with the other. The ceremony is not grand, not loud, not open to the village. It takes place in the back room of your home, just past the family altar, with a single candle burning and the scent of dried incense still lingering from the morning offering. Your mother does not attend. Your father sits behind you, legs folded, still as a statue. Your grandfather watches from the shadows, saying nothing. It is not about appearance. It is not about cleanliness. It is about crossing a line. After today, you are no longer a child. Not in name, not in posture, not in the eyes of the household. The part of you that played, that asked questions, that stumbled, is expected to vanish. After the hair is cut, you change into formal clothing. The fabric is stiff and unfamiliar, but you show no discomfort. A small dagger is tied to your belt, not sharp, not ceremonial, just a symbol. Your hands tremble slightly as you bow to the altar, but no one comments. You recite the passages you've memorized, not because they are sacred to you, but because you are told to. The words come out steady, practiced. Your father nods once, and that is the only acknowledgement you receive. There is no feast, no speech, no guests. The only offering is a bowl of rice and a cup of tea placed before the altar while your name is repeated aloud, not changed, but marked. From now on, you are expected to carry the name differently, not with pride, with weight. After the ceremony, you help sweep the floor. You fold the robe. You place the cut hair into a cloth and hand it to your uncle, who burns it behind the house without a word. That night, you sleep in the same place as before. The servant doesn't mention the ceremony. Your siblings say nothing, but something is different in the air. You are not called by the same words. You are no longer the child. When your grandmother asks you to carry water, she does not thank you. She only nods, as if it is now assumed that you will do what is needed without reminder. And you do. The next morning, you train longer. Your cousin strikes harder. The wooden blade leaves a mark across your ribs, but you do not flinch. When your father inspects your posture later that day, he adjusts nothing. That is a kind of approval. You begin to notice that no one corrects you anymore. You are expected to correct yourself. That is what it means to grow older in this house. Not to be guided more, but to be guided less. In the weeks that follow, the memory of the ceremony fades, but its consequences remain. You sit straighter. You rise earlier. You answer with fewer words. You are told to walk behind your father at a more respectful distance. When officials visit the house, you are allowed to remain in the room, but only if you remain silent. You begin copying records for your uncle in the evenings, practicing strokes by lamplight until your fingers ache. The knife on your belt is rarely touched, but it is always there. It reminds you not of power, but of responsibility. You carry it like you carry your name, visible but quiet. You are 12, and your world has not changed in shape, only in tone. But that tone is everything. Where once you were watched, now you are measured, and where once you were learning, now you are expected to remember. There is no going back. Not after the hair was cut, not after the blade was tied, not after the silence became yours to uphold. It starts with a scroll that is older than you, older than your father, older than the house itself. Your grandfather takes it from the wooden box beneath the family altar and unrolls it carefully, his fingers dry and deliberate. You are told to sit. You do. The scroll is a list of names, of dates, of brief lines that carry the weight of lives. Each character is written in a hand firmer than yours will ever be. Some ink faded, some smeared. Your grandfather doesn't explain what it is. He simply points to the top. Here, he says, this is where you begin. The name is unfamiliar, from a century ago. You ask nothing. You repeat it. You trace the character on your palm, then the next, and the next. You are expected to memorize all of it, not just the names, but how they fit together, who served whom, who died in battle, who married whose daughter. Not for pride, for survival. Because one day, someone will ask, and you must answer without hesitation. Each evening, you kneel at the low table with a blank sheet in front of you and copy the names from memory. If you forget one, you start again. If your brush strokes falter, your uncle makes you wash the sheet and begin from the top. You do not ask why you must learn this. You already know. The weight of a name can carry you into a room or keep you out of one. The wrong answer can dishonor your father in a conversation you won't even hear. So you memorize not just the lineage, but the stories hidden in it. The uncle who died on campaign but had no sons. The cousin whose estate was seized. The marriage that united your line to another household, 6 generations back. You recite them aloud each morning before breakfast, whispering them in order, eyes closed, until your voice becomes a rhythm. No one corrects you. They only listen for stumbles. Your father never praises. He simply places a new scroll beside the old one and says, "There's more." Some stories you are told, others you piece together. You learn which names to speak aloud and which to avoid. Not every ancestor is a source of pride. Some lines end too early. Some names carry silence with them. You don't ask what happened. You don't have to. The absence says enough. You write those names the same way as the rest, carefully, evenly, without judgment. It is not your place to decide what deserves memory, only to remember. You begin to see the pattern of your blood as a structure, a scaffold that holds up the present. Your name is not just yours. It is the final link in a long chain, and your job is not to shine, but not to break it. You start to repeat the phrase your grandfather uses whenever he hands you the scroll. Don't bring shame. At first it sounds like a warning. Later it begins to sound like a prayer. By the end of winter, you can recite the full line of your house from memory, name by name, back to the man who first received land in exchange for service. You say his name as if you knew him. You know how many sons he had, how many fields he tended, how he died. Your hands no longer tremble when you write the characters. The brush moves with confidence, even when the ink runs low. When your grandfather watches, he no longer interrupts. When your father checks your writing, he nods once and leaves. That night, your uncle says quietly, "It's yours now." And you understand. The scroll no longer belongs to the past. It belongs to you, not as a possession, but as a burden. You are 13 years old, and you are the memory your house will depend on not to forget itself. It is given to you without ceremony. No one calls for attention. No incense is lit. No priest arrives. One morning, after the training yard has been swept and the water bowls refilled, your father steps into the storehouse and returns with a wrapped bundle. He hands it to you wordlessly. The cloth is plain, tied with simple cord. You bow before touching it. When you untie it, the weight shifts in your hands before the blade even appears. It is smaller than the long swords carried by the older men, but heavier than you expect. The sheath is black lacquer, worn near the mouth. The hilt fits awkwardly in your hand. You do not draw it. You simply hold it, feeling its presence settle into your body like a second spine. This is not a gift. It is a responsibility passed down, not necessarily to you, but through you. Your father nods once and turns away. You know not to thank him. You are told where to keep it, how to wrap it, when to wear it. You are not yet allowed to carry it into formal meetings, but it must be with you at all other times. At meals, it rests beside you, always to the left. During training, it stays wrapped near the mat. When guests arrive, it must be tied properly, even if you don't touch it. You are not instructed in how to use it. That knowledge is assumed to be already forming in your hands from years of training with wood. This blade is not for practice. It is for presence. Its purpose is not action, but identity. When you walk with it, people see a boy with a name. When you kneel with it, others measure your posture more closely. Even your cousin, who once struck you hard enough to make you bleed, now bows to you a little deeper. Not because you are stronger, but because the blade makes you harder to ignore. The first time you wear it outside the house, your shoulder feels crooked. You keep adjusting your robe to accommodate the weight, unsure how to walk without tipping. The older men do not help. They watch from the gate as you pass, eyes blank, mouths still. Your uncle follows behind at a distance, not to guide you, but to witness. At the edge of the village, you bow to a traveling inspector who barely glances at you, but his glance lingers a second longer than it would have the day before. You feel it, that shift, that pause. It's not admiration, it's recognition. The blade makes you visible in a way you've never been. And with that visibility comes pressure. When you return home, you remove the sword and place it on the stand by the altar. You bow, not to the blade itself, but to the space it now occupies in your life. You are 14. You wake earlier. You speak less. You no longer eat with the younger children. You walk differently. You sit differently. You are not yet a full samurai. But the threshold has appeared, and you have stepped onto it. At night, you sometimes wake and feel for the sword before your own breath. Not out of fear, out of habit. The weight of it on your left side has already begun to shape you. You carry it not because you have earned it, but because one day you must. That is the difference. The blade is not a reward. It is a reminder. A quiet one, but constant. And from this point forward, it will never leave your side. Not until the day you receive another, or until it is taken from you. You are 15 when your father tells you to pack your things. Not everything, just what fits into a single cloth bundle. A change of robes, your writing brush, a small pouch of rice. Nothing else. The rest you leave behind. Your sleeping mat, the training yard, the quiet weight of home. You kneel before the altar, Light a single stick of incense and bow until your forehead touches the floor. No one embraces you. No one cries. Your mother adjusts your collar and steps back. Your younger siblings do not speak. Your father waits at the gate, his face unreadable. When you step outside the house, you are not a son. You are a servant in training. You walk for most of the day, first on a narrow road through farmland, then into the outer walls of a regional stronghold. There you are handed over like a letter. The samurai who accepts you says your name once, then tells you to follow. You do. From this point on, everything is watched. Every bow, every breath, every step. The man you serve is not cruel. He does not raise his voice, but you learn to fear his silence more than any shout. He is tall, quiet, precise. His home is larger than yours, but not extravagant. You sleep in a side room near the stables, where the other pages keep their bundles folded tight beneath their bedding. No one speaks the first night. In the morning, a bell wakes you, and the days begin. You rise before him, sweep the walkway outside his door, fetch water for his tea, prepare his sandals, check the clasps on his armor. You are not expected to speak unless spoken to. You are not expected to hesitate. You memorize his schedule, his preferences, the way he folds his sleeves when thinking. You polish the scabbard of his sword without looking at your reflection in it. You learn how to place his meal so that he never has to reach too far, and how to vanish without being noticed. The first time he speaks to you directly, he corrects the angle of your bow. That's all. But the tone is measured, and the room goes still. You don't speak the rest of the day, even to the other pages. That night, you kneel in your sleeping space and recite the names of your ancestors under your breath, not for comfort, but to remind yourself who is watching you, even when no one else is. Over time, the duties become instinct. You anticipate his movements before he makes them. You refill his ink without being asked. You listen for the way his footsteps fall heavier after returning from council meetings and adjust the heat of his tea accordingly. No one praises you, but your tasks remain yours. They are not reassigned. That is how you know you are doing well. In this house, now, survival is measured by what you are allowed to continue doing. After a few months, you are allowed to follow him outside the estate. You carry his second sword when he wears formal robes. Check the straps of his sandals before he mounts his horse. Stand behind him during visits to the castle. You never speak in these moments. You stand still, eyes low, posture perfect. Once, during a gathering of other retainers, another page fails to recognize a signal and drops a lacquer box. The sound echoes like thunder across the stone floor. No one reacts, but later, that page is reassigned. You never see him again. That night, you polish your master's armor twice, even though it wasn't worn. Not out of fear, out of clarity. The path you are on is narrow. It does not allow for missteps, but it does allow for transformation. You are no longer the boy who sat in the dirt yard reciting sutras. You are the shadow of a man whose name matters. And if you learn to move exactly right, that shadow might one day become your own. You learn the weight of armor before you're allowed to touch a real blade. Every morning, before the sun has risen fully, you step into the storage room and uncover each piece. The cuirass, the sword, the hydate, the shin guards, the mask, the helmet. Each has its place on the wooden racks. Each must be handled in a precise order. You kneel as you remove them, laying them on the mat in a line, never letting the metal scrape or clatter. Then you lift them, slowly, deliberately, resting the heavier parts against your shoulder as you walk toward the master's quarters. He never speaks when you enter. He only lifts his arms and waits. You dress him like a second skin, checking the knots, pulling the cords, smoothing the edges. You work quickly, but never rush. Mistakes mean delay, and delay is insult. The armor is old but polished, repaired many times over, and heavier than it looks. By the time you are done, your arms are sore. He nods once. You bow deeper. Then you return to the storage room and sweep the dust left behind. The horse is less predictable. Some days she stands still as stone. Other days she shifts and snorts, her hooves clacking against the courtyard tiles. You are responsible for her feeding, her brushing, the careful cleaning of her hooves. You learn to read her posture, when she is restless, when she's hungry, when she will tolerate being saddled without resistance. You carry water in 2 buckets, one at a time, across the backyard, pouring it into the trough while she watches. When she kicks, you do not flinch. When she resists the bit, you do not complain. Your master doesn't tolerate excuses, and neither does the animal. You groom her daily, even when she's not to be ridden. Her coat must shine. Her saddle straps must sit evenly, and her mane must be combed without knots. You whisper nothing to her. This is not a friendship. It is another duty. But over time, she begins to move when she hears your steps. Not out of affection, out of rhythm. She too begins to understand your place. Carrying the armor and caring for the horse are not seen as separate tasks. They are part of one motion, preparing the body that represents your house. The man and the beast are extensions of each other, and your hands serve both without question. You clean sweat from the leather straps in the evening, hang the damp cloths to dry, return to your quarters without leaving a trace of effort behind. You polish the metal until it reflects the oil lamp, even though no one sees it in the dark. Sometimes, your master returns from a training session with fresh dents in the plating. You kneel beside the armor and inspect each one carefully, filing down the roughest edges, retying the cords that slipped. You are not asked to do this. You are not thanked for doing this. But you do it anyway, because the standard is silent and unforgiving. If the armor fails, it is not his failure. It is yours. In time, the weight begins to feel normal. You can carry the full set across the courtyard without pausing. You can saddle the horse before the second bell rings. You can hear, in your master's footsteps, whether he wants the formal set or the lighter one. The armor no longer intimidates you. The horse no longer resists. You no longer wait to be told. And because of this, you are sometimes sent ahead, into the stable, into the storehouse, into the field, to prepare for what has not yet been announced. That too is a kind of promotion, though no one says it aloud. You are still a page, still invisible, still expected to vanish behind your duties. But the line between your master's presence and your own has begun to blur. His readiness depends on your preparation. His silence depends on your anticipation. And though you will never speak his name as an equal, you begin to feel that you are part of his shadow, not beneath it, but within it. That is enough. For now. You are 16 when it happens. The morning begins like any other. Silent, cool, precise. You saddle the horse, prepare the armor, carry the bundle of documents your master requested the night before. There's no urgency in his movements, but his robe is darker than usual, and he wears his formal sandals, the ones with the hardened soles. You follow him through the narrow streets that lead from the estate to the castle grounds, 2 steps behind, eyes down. At the gate, a retainer meets him and speaks in hushed tones. You don't listen to the words. You watch the angle of their heads, the pace of their walking, the way their hands remain hidden in their sleeves. That's how you know something is different. You are led not to the meeting hall, not to the garden or stables, but to the lower courtyard near the west wall, a place used only when something needs to be seen and remembered. Others are already gathered, guards, pages, 2 officials, and in the center, a man kneeling with his hands bound behind him, back straight, head lowered. No one tells you to watch, but you are not dismissed. You take your place behind your master, standing still, arms tucked at your sides, the short sword at your belt unmoved. The prisoner is thin, bruised, older than your father, but younger than your grandfather. His robe is torn at the shoulder. He says nothing. A scroll is read aloud. His name, his crime, the sentence. You do not understand the details, only the tone. There is no question in it, only closure. Your master steps forward without ceremony. He does not change expression. He does not raise his voice. A guard hands him the blade, sharpened, polished, ready. Your mouth is dry. Your knees feel loose, like something inside you is shifting. But you stay still. You breathe evenly. You do not let your eyes drift. The man does not resist. He bows as far as the rope allows. And then, with a single motion, it is done. The sound is not loud. It is quick, clean, practiced. The body folds forward. The blood moves faster than your thoughts. For a moment, the courtyard is silent. Then the guard steps forward, wipes the blade, retrieves the body. Your master hands the sword back and turns away. You follow him. Your steps are steady, though your stomach pulls toward the floor. No one speaks to you. No one checks your face. But you know they are watching from the corners of their eyes. You return to the estate. Your master removes his robe, washes his hands, and sits in the formal room without speaking. You bring him tea. Your hand do not shake. That night you wipe down his armor even though it was never worn. You polish the sword that stayed in its sheath. And when you return to your quarters, you kneel before the small family altar and recite the sutras twice, slowly, without pause. In the days that follow, nothing is said. No one asks how you felt. No one confirms what you saw. But your chores are changed. You are sent to handle official errands alone. You carry sealed documents. You are trusted with the key to the gate. No one explains why. They don't have to. You understand now that part of your training was silence. Not just the silence of speech, but the silence of reaction. You did not flinch. You did not turn away. You did not shame your master with softness. And so, whether or not your heart beat too fast, whether or not you dreamt of the blade for nights afterward, you passed. That is what matters. You are 16, and you know now that service means not only doing what is required, but holding steady when it is done in front of you. No one tells you the exact day in advance, but you begin to notice signs. Your father returns from the castle and looks at you longer than usual before turning away. Your master's other retainers begin to step aside when you pass, not with ceremony, but with quiet intention. One morning, a new set of clothes is laid out for you, formal, stiffer than anything you've worn before. You dress in silence, Your hands do not tremble, though they want to. Outside, your father waits in the courtyard. He does not speak. He only nods once and you follow. You walk together toward the family shrine, your steps echoing across the stones. There is no crowd, no guests, only your uncle, your grandfather, and a scroll placed carefully on the altar, tied with cord the color of ash. A sword stand sits to the side, empty. The air is still. A candle burns. No one smiles. You kneel. Your name is spoken aloud, not as a boy, but as a man who now carries his family's weight. A short oath is read. You've practiced it before, but today you speak it without pause, without looking down. You promise loyalty, obedience, endurance. You promise to protect the name you were born with and never act for yourself alone. When the words are finished, your father places the swords before you, the long and the short. Daisho. They are wrapped, but you feel the weight of them through the cloth. You bow until your forehead touches the floor. When you rise, you take them into your hands. You do not draw them. You do not test them. They are not tools. They are identity. You place them at your left side and tie them with care. The knot has been practiced 100 times, but today it holds different. Today it counts. Your father watches but does not adjust it. That is part of the test. When you finish, he bows. Not deeply, but enough. That night, you sit with the family and eat in full silence. No one remarks on the swords, though they rest beside you on the floor, as tradition demands. Your younger siblings sneak glances at them, but quickly look away. The meal is simple. Rice, pickled radish, a small piece of fish, nothing celebratory. When you finish eating, you clear your own bowl. You clean your hands. You return to your quarters and place the swords on the stand near your sleeping mat. You bow once before lying down. That night, you do not sleep deeply. You feel the weight of the new name, the sharpened edge of expectation. You do not feel stronger. You feel smaller. Like the space you now occupy has narrowed. Like there are fewer places to move, fewer reasons to speak, fewer chances to err. You are not free. You are claimed. In the days that follow, the difference becomes visible. You are permitted into rooms you were once asked to wait outside. You are trusted with errands that require silence and discretion. The other pages begin to bow to you, just slightly, when you pass. Your master does not acknowledge the change directly. But one morning, he steps aside and allows you to pour his tea. That is enough. You walk with the daisho at your side now, the long sword moving against your hip, the short one resting behind it. You still train, still serve, still polish armor and tend the horse. Nothing in your duties has changed, but everything in how they are seen has. You are 16. You wear 2 swords, and whether or not you feel like one, they now call you samurai. You are 17 when they tell you to prepare for travel. The message is short, carried by a courier in plain clothing who hands it to your father without bowing. He reads it once, folds it, and leaves it on the table without comment. That evening, he speaks to you for the first time in days. You leave at first light, he says. 3 days by road. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't forget your name. He doesn't say where you're going. You already know. Rumors have passed through the estate for weeks, of reassignments, of shifting loyalties, of young men being placed into the service of new lords, to prove their house's value. You are not surprised. You are not excited. This is not an invitation. It is a transfer of weight from one shoulder to another. You pack carefully, bringing only what's necessary. Your swords, your robes, a few coins, a scroll bearing your lineage. You bow to your mother, who does not meet your eyes. You kneel before the family altar, and you leave. The road is long, but familiar. Villages pass in silence. The inns are cold and sparse. You do not speak to the travelers you meet. Your escort is a man twice your age who says even less than you do. He rides ahead, and you walk behind the pack horse, never asking how far. The castle appears on the third day, rising from the edge of a narrow river, surrounded by fields of winter grass. It is smaller than the one you trained near, but its walls are cleaner, its guards more alert. You present your documents at the gate. A steward reads them, nods once, and leads you through a corridor that smells of old wood and ink. You are brought to a room with no windows, where you kneel and wait. Minutes pass. Then the door slides open, and he enters. Your new master. You lower your head, pressing your palms to the floor. He does not ask your name. He only says, "Stand, follow." And so you do. The duties are similar. You are assigned to his personal guard, not as a warrior, but as a presence. You stand outside his door in the mornings, follow him to council meetings, accompany him on inspections of the armory and the barracks. You are not asked for your opinion. You are not given tasks beyond observation and readiness. But you learn quickly that readiness is everything. He speaks less than your previous master, but watches more closely. A slight misstep, a bowed head held too long or too short, and he will look at you for a heartbeat longer than necessary. That look is enough. You polish your armor at night. You inspect your swords twice a day. You eat with the other retainers, but never speak unless addressed. They know you are new. Some test you with glances, with questions asked indirectly. You respond with formality and nothing else. Eventually, they stop asking. There are no familiar faces here. No one who knew you as a boy. No one who remembers your first bruise or your first training mistake. Everything you are now is everything they see. You wear the name of your house on your shoulder, not in pride but in accountability. If you fail, they won't just say you failed. They'll say your family failed. That's the pressure you carry with each bow, each glance, each step. On the seventh evening, your new master passes you in the corridor and pauses. He adjusts the hilt of your sword slightly, only by a finger's width, and walks on. It is not a correction. It is a reminder. You are being shaped, still, even now, even here. You return to your quarters and retie the knot again and again until it no longer shifts. You are 17. You serve a man whose name you barely know, and that, for now, is exactly what is required. You are given a post at the outer gate, not because it is important, but because it is visible. Each morning before sunrise, you dress in your assigned uniform, secure your swords at your side, and walk the narrow gravel path that leads to the front gate of the estate. The other guards are older, quieter, already settled into the rhythm of watching without reacting. You are not told what to do beyond a few basic rules. Stand straight, don't speak unless spoken to, and remember who sees you. The gate itself is simple. 2 heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron, rarely opened, always guarded. Most of the time, they remain shut. Visitors are infrequent. deliveries even less so. Still, you stand for hours, unmoving, eyes level with the path. You learn quickly that stillness is not the same as absence. You must be present in your stillness, watching, listening, ready to speak only when required, never before. The days blend into each other. You begin to recognize the faces of the workers who pass by, the gardener with his limp, the cook's assistant who always walks too fast, the messenger boy with the ink-stained sleeves. You bow to each one, even when they pretend not to see you. The older guards do not make conversation. They occasionally nod at your posture or correct the angle of your shoulders with a gesture. You adjust immediately. You are watched more closely than they are. You are still new. You are still proving that you belong. At midday, you are allowed a short break to drink water and eat a handful of rice. You do so behind the wall, out of sight. When you return, no one speaks. No one asks if you're ready. They expect you to be. The sun moves slowly across the sky. You do not check its position. You measure the day by the silence between footsteps on the gravel. Sometimes there are visitors, low-ranking officials, local farmers with petitions, merchants delivering goods. You do not speak to them directly. You announce their arrival to the steward inside, then return to your post. When a samurai from another house approaches, you bow deeper and lower your eyes. You are not yet of rank to meet their gaze. You listen carefully to every conversation, even if your face shows nothing. You begin to hear patterns in their words. What tone signals deference? What phrasing hints at a bribe? What silence means disagreement? No one teaches you these things. You learn them the way you've learned everything else. By watching, by repeating, by making your body respond before your thoughts can catch up. At night, you return to your sleeping mat with aching knees and a ringing silence in your head. You say nothing about it. The next morning, you rise before the bell and stand again. You do this every day for months. No change in assignment, no promotion, no special orders, just the same post, the same gate, the same hours. And slowly, something shifts, not in the world, but in you. The ache in your back dulls. The boredom becomes structure. The silence starts to feel familiar. You stop needing to be told how to hold your hands or where to look. You begin to notice things before they happen. A loose strap on a passing cart, a servant limping slightly more than usual, a horse breathing too hard after a short ride. You don't act on these things. You're not meant to. But you see them, and you remember them. That too is part of standing guard. You are not a wall. You are not a statue. You are a blade still in its sheath, upright and ready, even if no one draws you. You are 17. And for now, this post, this silence, is your place in the world. The duties expand, but no one tells you that they have. One morning, instead of standing at the gate, you are handed a roster on thin paper, the ink still wet, and told to begin making rounds. You are not given instruction, just a nod and the expectation that you already know what matters. You move from post to post around the estate, counting men, checking names, noting who is late, who is missing, who is present but dull-eyed. You don't speak much. You don't need to. Most of them already know who you are. Some nod, others don't. You mark them just the same. By midday, the list is complete, folded, and handed to a steward without a word. In the afternoon, you return to your post, but the air around you feels different. Not lighter, just denser, more precise. You are now responsible not only for being seen, but for seeing. Every glance you record, every silence you measure. No one thanks you for the list. The next day, a new one appears. You begin to rotate through different watches. The courtyard, the stables, the rear gate, the corridors of the inner quarters. Each has its own rhythm, its own sounds, its own expectations. The rear gate is colder, but quieter. The corridors are warmer, but always under the eyes of someone above your rank. You move through each space like smoke, present, but not intrusive. When your shift ends, you return to the armory. That's where the second part of your day begins. You take the armor piece by piece, some worn, some dusty, some untouched in weeks, and clean it in silence. You lay it out on the mat, untie the cords, remove the plates, wipe them one by one with cloth and oil. You check for cracks, for loosened bindings, for spots where rust has begun to creep. Then you retie everything, fold it, and place it back in its proper place on the shelf. You do this not once, but for every set in your section. It takes hours. Your hands smell of iron and oil when you return to your quarters. No one watches you do this, but someone always checks after. You can tell by the way a plate is slightly tilted or a cord slightly rewrapped. You are not corrected, only reminded that your work is not just for today. It is for the moment when a mistake costs more than time. You begin to recognize the weight of each cuirass, the slight curve of each helmet, the faint nicks along the edges of older greaves. You treat each set not as property, but as preparation. You know which guards drag their feet and wear through their sandals faster, and which ones tighten their cords too hard and split the lining. You adjust for them without being told. That, too, is part of service. It is not only your own armor you are responsible for. It is the readiness of everyone who may stand beside you when silence is no longer enough. You clean their armor as if it were your own, because in a way it is. The days blur, lists in the morning, watches in the afternoon, armor at night. Sometimes you eat late, sometimes not at all. You don't complain. The weight of routine does not burden you anymore. It clarifies you. It shapes your breath, your posture, the angle of your steps. You begin to feel it in your bones, that this is the center of your life now, not a phase, not a test. There is no end point to these tasks, no ceremony to mark that you have passed into something greater. You simply continue. You are not praised. You are not punished. You are absorbed. One day you notice that your sword hand no longer aches after hours of polishing, that your back stays straight even when no one is looking, that the guards you used to count now step aside when you pass. You are still young. You are still replaceable. But you are now part of the pattern that keeps the estate standing. And that, for now, is enough. The order comes with no warning. You are handed a short scroll at dusk, stamped with the seal of your commander, and told to report to the rear barracks before nightfall. No explanation, no time to rest or prepare. You tighten your robe, strap your swords higher on your hip, and go. At the gate, 2 other men are already waiting. One older, one younger, both quiet. You recognize neither of them. A servant passes out bundles of supplies, rice wrapped in oilcloth, a water skin, 2 candles, and a thin blanket that smells faintly of smoke. You are not told where you're going. You follow the lead guard through the narrow path behind the estate, up toward the ridge overlooking the road to the neighboring province. The climb is steep, the trees thick, and the night falls quickly. By the time you reach the watchpost, your clothes are damp with sweat, and your skin already stings with cold. The watch begins immediately. No fire, no talking. You take the first shift. The post is a simple structure: wooden roof, open walls, a lookout slit facing the road below. Wind slips in from every direction. The floor is packed dirt. You are told to record every traveler that passes, even if they appear harmless. No one will come, they say, but you must write as if someone might. You sit with your back against the wall, eyes fixed forward, ears open to every leaf that stirs. The night drags. Hours stretch thin. Your body aches, not from work, but from stillness. When your shift ends, you lie down, but sleep does not come. The ground is too hard, your mind too loud. Your turn returns too quickly. You eat a few bites of rice, cold, damp, tasteless, but it does nothing to warm you. Water tastes like copper. Your fingers grow numb. The second night is worse. You begin to see shapes where there are none. A bird call sounds like a whistle. A rustling becomes footsteps. Your hand rests on your sword more often than needed. By the third day, your eyes sting with dryness. The wind never stops. Your blanket no longer holds warmth. You stop counting hours. You only move when the others do. Conversation is still not allowed, but now it wouldn't help. Words would feel foreign in your mouth. You write the report slowly, carefully, even though nothing has changed. Still no travelers, still no sign of trouble, still no sleep. Your handwriting wobbles. You steady it. You recite names in your head to stay alert. Your ancestors, your instructors, the names on the armor you cleaned last week. The others remain expressionless, but you can see it in their movements. The same exhaustion, the same weight. When the messenger finally arrives to relieve your post, he says nothing. Just hands over a fresh scroll and gestures for you to leave. You bow. You descend. The walk back feels longer than the climb. Every step jars your knees. Every route seems too high. When you reach the barracks, the world feels muffled, your breath shallow. You turn in your supplies, bow to the officer, and wait to be dismissed. No one thanks you. No one comments on your state. You return to your quarters and sit on the floor for a long time, unmoving. You don't undress. You don't eat. You simply listen to the silence, which now feels heavier than the cold wind on the ridge. When you finally sleep, it is not restful. You do not dream. The next day, your schedule resumes as if nothing happened, and you say nothing because nothing broke. You went, you stood, you returned. That is enough. That is the point. You are no longer waiting to be tested. You are simply expected to endure. It happens in the middle of the day, in full view of others. You've been running errands since dawn, carrying crates to the storehouse, checking patrol rosters, delivering a sealed message across the compound, and back before the bell finishes sounding. The sun is high, the humidity thick, the air unmoving. You feel it before it comes, that strange lightness behind your eyes, the way your feet stop feeling like they touch the ground. You keep moving anyway. You always do, but then your vision tightens, sound narrows, and your legs give way beneath you. You don't fall hard. You crumple, like cloth. For a moment, there's only shadow and dust. When you come to, someone is pouring water over your forehead. Your robe is open at the neck. Your swords have been removed. You blink against the light and try to sit up. The hand on your shoulder holds you down, not harsh, but firm. "Stay," someone says, but the voice isn't familiar. That's the worst part. You lost awareness in front of people who don't know you. They carry you into a shaded storage room and leave you there to cool. No healer comes. No one checks your pulse. A guard from the main hall arrives an hour later and hands you a folded note. It's short, written in your commander's hand. 4 lines. No signature. You are not dismissed from duty. You are not told to rest. You are told to report for inspection before sundown and to explain in person why you left your post. That's all. When you stand, your legs shake. You feel shame more than exhaustion. You put your swords back on, adjust your robe, and walk the full length of the compound without showing strain. The guard at the door doesn't salute. He just lets you pass. Inside, your commander sits on the floor behind a low desk, writing something unrelated. He does not look up. You bow deeply. He waits. When he finally speaks, his voice is calm. If you collapse again, it will not be treated as illness. It will be treated as failure. You bow again. He doesn't tell you to leave, so you wait until he lifts his hand. Then you go. That night, you eat half your portion and say nothing to the others. No one asks. You clean your armor as usual, though you haven't worn it. You inspect the cords on your scabbard twice. You fold your bedding early, even though sleep will not come. The next morning, you rise before the bell and take your place by the wall. Your movements are slower, but deliberate. You force water down between shifts. You stretch your knees in the corners when no one is looking. You remind yourself of each motion, each breath, as if you are rebuilding your body from the inside. There is no recovery time, no allowance for recovery. You have marked yourself, and now you must erase it through consistency. For days you are watched more closely. Corrections come sharper. Tasks are assigned without notice. You accept them all. You carry, scrub, count, report. You do not falter. Later, when the memory returns, it comes not as a fall, but as a sound. The sound your body made when it hit the ground, and how quiet the courtyard became for a moment afterward. That silence followed you into the storage room, into the inspection chamber, into your sleep. It wasn't the silence of concern. It was the silence of witnesses. Everyone saw. Everyone remembered. And now they are waiting to see if you deserve to stay. You are not the first to fall, but you are responsible for how you stand again. You do not speak of it. You do not ask for a lighter schedule. You train harder. You sharpen your weapons even when they are already clean. And eventually, the silence shifts. The glances fade. The work becomes work again. The routine becomes routine. But in the back of your mind, the weight of that one moment never leaves. You carry it like you carry your sword, on the left, always balanced, always remembered. You don't know exactly how it started. They say the farmers stopped paying. Then someone burned a granary. Then a messenger boy went missing, found days later face down in the river. That was enough. The order comes at dusk. Saddle your horse, prepare food for 3 days, bring only what you can carry, and report to the west gate before dark. You're not told what to expect. You're not even told where you're going. But you know. Everyone does. You've seen the whispers around the courtyard, the tension in the stable hand's eyes, the way armor has been quietly polished a day early. A punitive march, they call it. Not a war, not a raid, just a correction, a reminder. You tie your belongings with still hands, adjust your sword straps, and ride. The group is 20 men, all samurai, all silent. The commander doesn't speak more than necessary. You ride single file through narrow paths between rice fields, then up into low hills where the wind carries the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. You pass small huts in silence. No one waves. No one steps outside. You are not a visitor. You are a warning. When you reach the village by midday, the headman is already waiting, kneeling beside the road. His forehead touches the dirt. Behind him, a few dozen others bow low, silent, unmoving. The commander dismounts and speaks softly, without anger. He recites the debts, the offenses, the violations of duty. Then he waits. The headman says nothing. His voice has no power here. A signal is given. 3 men are pulled from the group and dragged aside. They do not scream. One tries to resist. He is struck in the throat and folds, gasping. They are tied, blindfolded, and led away. You don't ask where. The rest of the day is spent inspecting homes, barns, tools. Every sack of rice is counted, every blade examined for signs of theft. You are told to watch, to report, to strike only when told. One man refuses to open his door. The door is kicked in, and he is beaten. His son cries. His wife holds him back, barely. You stand near the gate, sword drawn but unused. You are not sure if that makes you clean or complicit. When night falls, a fire is set in the field. A message, not destruction. You camp on the edge of the village, under the trees. The farmers do not sleep. You can hear them. Soft footsteps, stifled sobs, prayers whispered toward ancestors who are no longer listening. Your own sleep is shallow. You dream of nothing, but wake exhausted. In the morning, the tied men are brought forward. They kneel beside the headman. He does not look at them. The commander reads a short sentence. Faustramses his hand. It is done quickly. 1 stroke each. The heads fall forward, clean. You do not flinch, but your hand tightens on the hilt. The villagers do not scream. They bow lower. No words are exchanged. No apologies are accepted. You remount, turn back, and ride home in silence. No one speaks for hours. When you reach the compound, your armor is dirtier than it should be. Your sandals are damp. You return your weapons, clean them as always, and eat your evening rice as if nothing happened. No one praises you. No one questions you. The next morning, you are sent to stand watch at the north wall, same as before. But something has shifted, in you and around you. Not guilt, exactly, just silence that doesn't leave. It happens quickly, too quickly to stop. You're carrying a torch through the supply tent, checking for rats in the rice sacks after the rain. 1 shift of fabric, 1 gust of wind, and the flame licks upward. You feel the heat first, then the pain. It hits the side of your forearm, a bloom of fire that sears into the skin before your mind can catch up. You drop the torch and smother the edge of your sleeve in the dirt, grinding your arm into the ground until the flame is out. The wound is already red, blistered. You grit your teeth and cover it with the fabric again, wrapping it tightly in your inner robe. You look around. No one saw. No one called out. That's something. That buys you time. There's a healer in the village down the ridge, just over an hour away on foot. You know this, but you also know the rules. No one leaves the camp without direct permission, and no one leaves for something like a burn. If you're bleeding, if your bones are broken, if you're unconscious, then someone will carry you. But if you're standing, if you can hold a weapon, then you're fine. That's the line. You sit in your corner of the tent, unwrapping the wound just enough to see how bad it is. The skin is raised, shiny, leaking fluid. Your fingers twitch from the heat trapped under the surface. You breathe slowly. You wrap it again. The linen clings. That night, you do not sleep. Every movement rubs against the burn. Every breath reminds you of how close the flame was to your eyes, your face. You say nothing. The next morning, you are ordered to haul water from the stream. You use your left hand more. You clench your jaw when the bucket knocks against your forearm. No one notices. Or maybe they do, but choose not to speak. You're not the only one carrying something beneath the sleeves. By midday, the skin begins to peel. You change the wrap using scraps from your bedding. It smells faintly of mold and oil, but it's better than nothing. A fly lands on the edge of the cloth. You swat it away. At meals, you eat slowly, trying not to let your arm rest on the floor. Someone comments on your quietness. You nod and shrug. You are tired. That's all. Later, while cleaning the weapons, one of the senior men tells a story about a soldier who let a wound go soft and was forced to amputate. He laughs while he says it. You don't laugh. You simply keep polishing. 3 days pass before the pain dulls into heat. You no longer feel it unless something touches it. The skin hardens, then cracks. The wrap sticks to it each morning. When you pull it free, the noise it makes is soft but deep, like wet wood breaking. You grow used to it. The body always adjusts, even when the mind doesn't. You take longer to dress now, but you work faster to compensate. You speak less, but listen more. The burn doesn't stop you from training, from writing reports, from sitting still during meetings. And so, eventually, it becomes part of you, another thing you carry without speaking, another quiet injury that no one needs to see. When it finally scabs, you don't touch it. You let it fade on its own. There is no ceremony for healing, only continued service, and the hope that next time, the flame misses. By the time you return, you are almost 30. You've been away for so long that the paths seem smaller, the trees lower, the hills less sharp than you remembered. You dismount slowly at the gate and bow to the same old steward who once scolded you for dirty sandals. He bows deeper now. Your father is older. His walk is slower, his beard thinner, but his gaze still cuts the same. He nods when he sees you, not with pride, but with approval. It's enough. You unpack in silence. The room you slept in as a boy smells of old wood and dried ink. The walls are still covered in your childhood calligraphy. You sit beside your futon and listen to the wind scrape through the paper screens. For the first time in years, you sleep without armor within arm's reach. The arrangement was made months ago. You knew it from the letters, the formal seals, the careful brushstrokes discussing lineage and property and obligation. She is the daughter of another vassal, a man your father once fought beside, once drank with, once feared. Their houses have traded favors for decades. Now they trade children. You meet her in the garden, beneath the cherry tree that has not yet blossomed. She bows perfectly. You bow the same. Her voice is calm, practiced. She has been taught what to say, how to say it. You talk about the weather, the harvest, your shared ancestors from generations back. When she looks at you, her eyes pause just enough to be polite, but not long enough to ask anything. You do not mind. You have nothing to ask either. The wedding is simple. It is not a celebration. It is a confirmation. The priests speak their lines. The cups are passed. The ink dries on the papers. There is no music, no laughter, only the rustle of silk and the smell of incense. That night, you sit across from her in a room prepared with quiet efficiency. She waits. You do not rush. You remove your sword and place it beside the door. You unfasten your robe. She moves only when you do. There is no conversation, only ritual. Her skin is warmer than yours. Her breath is steady. She does not flinch. When it is done, you both lie still, eyes open, listening to the temple bell in the distance. It sounds like thunder through the paper walls. In the morning, she rises before you. She folds your robe without a word. You leave for the courtyard. Your father speaks to you about duties, about land, about inheritance. Your wife prepares tea in the other room. She does not speak unless spoken to. You are not unhappy, but you are not anything. The days begin again. You ride out to inspect the fields. You help settle a dispute between two farmers over an irrigation line. You supervise repairs to the stable roof. You report each task to your father, and he nods, and then nothing more. At night, your wife kneels beside the hearth, combing her hair. You watch her reflection in the bronze mirror. She does not look back. You do not expect her to. You both play the parts given to you, and for now, that is enough. She does not speak. Not out of rudeness, not out of fear, but simply because there is nothing that needs to be said. In the mornings, she bows. In the evenings, she pours tea. You exchange courtesies when others are present. Simple things, rehearsed long ago. But when the walls are quiet and the household is still, her mouth stays closed. You listen to her footsteps on the wooden floor. You watch the way her hands fold linens, the way her sleeves brush the edge of the table, the way she sits kneeling for hours without shifting. It is not coldness. It is discipline. You wonder who taught it to her. You wonder if she will ever stop measuring each movement, or if this is simply the shape her life will keep. The nights are still, predictable. She lies beside you, her breath soft and even. You do not speak then either. You have grown used to silence. It no longer feels empty. You remember the barracks, the patrols, the long hours on watch without saying a word to another soul. This is not so different. You both understand what is required. You eat together. You share the same roof. Your shadows stretch across the same walls. In time, your routines intertwine. Her tea always warm when you return. Your sandals always placed just so by the door. One evening, you find a folded paper on your writing table. Inside is a list of cloth types and measurements. She wants to sew a winter robe for you. It is the first time she has written to you directly. You answer with a single word, yes. She does not announce her pregnancy. You find out when her walk changes. She starts to rise slower, to rest more in the afternoon, to leave food unfinished. You don't ask, but you notice. The steward confirms it a week later, in a low voice, as if discussing the weather. A physician visits once a month. Herbs arrive in small folded packets. Your wife eats quietly, drinks carefully, sleeps earlier. You do not touch her unless invited. The house adjusts to her rhythm. The servants tread more lightly. Even your father begins to speak softer near her. The silence between you begins to feel less like absence and more like shelter. You begin to understand it was never about distance. It was about respect. And now, it is about care. The child arrives on a wet morning, while the mist still clings to the ground. You are outside when you hear it. The cry, brief and thin, like the whimper of a fox. You do not rush. That would be improper. Instead, you wait at the edge of the corridor until the midwife emerges and bows. "A son," she says. "Strong, breathing well." You nod once. Inside, your wife lies pale but calm, her hair undone, her eyes not quite focused. You do not touch her. You kneel at the doorway and bow. She nods back. That night, the child sleeps in a wicker cradle near the hearth. You sit across from it, watching the small rise and fall of his chest. He looks nothing like you yet. Only time will tell. Your wife does not speak, but she places your tea down beside you, her hand steadier than it has been in weeks. You both sit. You both listen to the fire crackle. And you wait, for morning, for names, for whatever comes next. He begins early, just as you did. At 3, he learns how to kneel without shifting. At 4, he learns how to bow at the right angle for each person in the household. You correct him gently at first, then firmly when he forgets. His hands are small, clumsy. His focus wanders. You remind yourself that yours did too once, but you also remember the sting of your father's voice, the sharpness of discipline, the feeling of failure carried in your bones. You promised you would be different, and you are, for a while. But patience fades when a wooden sword lies crooked in his hand, when his feet stumble over basic stances, when he forgets the second line of the family prayer. You do not shout, but your silence grows heavier, and he feels it. By the age of 6, he carries a practice blade at his waist. It wobbles when he walks. You fasten it tighter each time, watching the way he flinches when it tugs at his hip. He is not strong. His arms are thin, and his grip weak. But strength can be built. You make him rise before the sun. You walk together in the garden, repeating footwork until the frost melts. He whimpers once when he slips on the stones. You do not stop. His mother watches from behind the screen door. She never intervenes, never questions. Only once, after a long day of failed kata, she leaves a rice ball wrapped in cloth on your son's writing desk. You do not speak of it. You let him eat it in silence. You teach him to recite the history of your clan, the names of the lords you served, the years battles were fought and lost. He mixes them up at first, says the wrong name. You make him start again. Sometimes he cries, quietly, shoulders shaking, but voice steady. You do not comfort him. You adjust his posture, tell him to begin once more. At night, you hear him murmuring lines in his sleep. Your wife says nothing, but her gaze lingers longer at the dinner mat he no longer shares. When you look at your son's hands, you see the red welts where wood met skin. He does not complain, but he doesn't smile either. Not at you, not anymore. You tell yourself it is necessary, that this is how boys become men, that this is how men become samurai. One evening, long after the candles burn low, you find him in the courtyard. He is alone, kneeling in seiza, eyes closed, sword across his lap. His breathing is slow, controlled. His back is straight. For a moment, he looks older, still small, still unsure, but holding the posture without trembling. You do not approach. You do not speak. You simply watch and wonder if this, finally, is the beginning of something. Strength, resolve, understanding. Or if it is only repetition. A boy mimicking a father who mimicked his. A cycle of discipline dressed as legacy. You return inside, leaving him in the dark. In your own room, you sit beside your sword, feeling the old ache in your knee, the echo of bruises you no longer name. And you wonder, not if he'll be strong, but if he'll learn how to carry weakness without breaking, just like you did. The war does not begin with thunder. It begins with letters. One arrives at dawn, sealed in black lacquer. Another follows by midday, brought by a sweating rider with dust on his lips. No one speaks of it aloud, but the silence shifts in the house. Doors begin to close faster. Meals are smaller. The steward starts measuring rice more carefully. Your lord calls for a meeting. You kneel in a long row, eyes down, as he speaks of honor and duty. He names the enemies. He speaks of their treachery, of their ambition. He speaks of your clan's loyalty. When your name is called, you bow low and accept your role. You are not assigned a sword. You are assigned a banner. It is taller than you remember. The cloth is stiff, the pole heavier than expected. Your arms ache by the first hour. Your armor, though ceremonial, pinches in places you forgot could hurt. You do not complain. Behind the front line, you walk slowly, steadily, matching the rhythm of the drums. The wind pulls at the banner. Your fingers go numb holding it. Sometimes you feel eyes on you, peasants, foot soldiers, younger samurai. You do not meet their gaze. You know what they see. Not a warrior, but a symbol. Not steel, but fabric. You were not chosen for your strength. You were chosen for your discipline, for your reliability, for your silence. The march lasts 3 days. You sleep sitting up, your back against your pole arm, your knees stiff in the morning. No one speaks to you unless needed. You are not part of the planning, not part of the fight. You are part of the image. The Lord must be seen. The colors must be known. The men must see the flag and remember who they serve. That is your task. One evening, a boy not yet 15 comes to clean your armor. He stares too long at your sword, still tied to your waist, untouched. You say nothing. He asks if you fought in the last battle. You do not answer. He bows and leaves. You realize you don't remember the last time your blade left its sheath. The battle is sudden. Screams, hooves, metal. You do not run forward. You do not raise a sword. You stand where you were ordered, knees braced, flag raised high. Arrows hiss past. Mud coats your feet. Someone crashes behind you, breath gurgling through blood. You do not look. You keep the banner upright. Your hands blister. You feel every fiber of cloth straining above you, as if the war pulls upward, not forward. When it ends, you are still standing. The Lord's crest still flies. Your arms are shaking. No one thanks you. No one needs to. You are not the blade. You are what comes before the blade. what lingers after, and tomorrow you will lift it again. It comes from the side. You don't even see the archer. One moment you're adjusting your grip on the banner pole, the next, something strikes your left shoulder with a force that's not sharp, not cold, but somehow dense. You stagger back a step. The cloth flutters. You feel it, the thin wood shaft lodged just beneath the bone. It doesn't pierce through, it stays in. You do not scream, you do not drop, you do not speak. Your body wobbles slightly and then corrects itself. You raise the banner again, a little higher this time, even though your arm has started to tremble. Around you, no one notices. Or if they do, they choose not to look. Later, someone asks if you're wounded. You nod, nothing more. A wound is a fact. It is not a conversation. You walk back to camp with the arrow still in you. You're told the healer is busy with the swordsman. You wait. You don't ask twice. When your turn comes, you kneel and remove your outer robe. The old man clucks his tongue and pours something into the wound that smells of rotten pears and iron. It burns. You don't flinch. He tells you that you're lucky. A few inches deeper and it would have shattered the joint. You nod again. He asks if you want pain medicine. You shake your head. He shrugs and moves on. You wrap the shoulder yourself. That night, you sleep sitting up. The pain hums like a small drum beneath your skin. When the sky turns pale, you get up without being called. You lift the banner again. Your arm protests, but you do it anyway. No one says anything. But some of the men step aside when you pass. A boy salutes without smiling. One of the younger samurai gives you his portion of rice, saying he's not hungry. You take it without a word. You do not mention the arrow. You do not show the wound. But they know. And that is enough. There is a strange pride in the silence, in having stayed on your feet when others might have fallen. You don't tell your wife. When you return, weeks later, your robe covers the bandage. She pours your tea, as always, her eyes lowered. Your son asks if there was a battle. You say yes. He asks if you fought. You say no. Then he asks if you were hurt. You hesitate, then nod once. He says nothing, but you see the way he straightens his spine afterward. That night, alone in the courtyard, you trace your fingers along the fading bruise. It still aches, but not in a way that makes you feel weak. It aches in a way that reminds you stayed upright, and sometimes that is all a man can do. By the time you near 40, your name carries a certain weight, not loud, not celebrated, but solid. You are known not for brilliance or bloodshed, but for discipline, for showing up, for staying quiet. When the post becomes vacant, there's little discussion. A man who once trained beside you whispers it was expected. You nod, though it never occurred to you to hope for it. The Lord's steward delivers the formal notice in the courtyard, beneath a sky too bright for the season. "Senior Arms Warden," he says flatly. You bow. You know what this means. You're no longer sent to the field. Your banner days are over. Your new quarters are colder, but quieter. You rise earlier than most. The armory keys hang heavy on your belt, a physical reminder of the trust placed in you. You inspect the racks each morning, spears polished, blades oiled, armor lined in neat rows. You mark what's missing. You note what's cracked. You order repairs with careful brush strokes, signing your name with the practiced hand of someone who still mistrusts paper. The apprentices bow when they pass. One of them asks if you ever killed a man. You answer with a look. He doesn't ask again. You teach them how to bind grips with care, how to test blade balance, how to listen for weakness in steel. You don't speak often, but when you do, they listen. Sometimes you watch the younger men train, their feet too loud on the courtyard stone, their strikes too wide. But their fire is clean. It reminds you of yourself, or of someone you thought you were. You remember the first time you held a blade alone, the weight of it both terrifying and magnetic. You remember the field where you took your first wound, and how no one spoke of it after. You remember your wedding day, the way your wife's eyes flickered toward the garden rather than meet yours. You remember holding your son's shoulders too tightly when he cried during practice. You still apologize for that. In your mind, never aloud. Your hair has thinned. Your shoulder aches when it rains. But your hands are still steady, and your judgment still trusted. You train others now, so not in battle, but in preparation. You're not their leader. You're not their master. But when something breaks, they bring it to you. When someone falters, they watch how you stand. And late at night, when the oil lamps burn low and no one is speaking, you sit by the wall of blades and realize you are surrounded by weapons you no longer use, and yet you feel no lack. Because these, too, are your duty. And duty, once accepted, does not shrink. It only shifts. For almost 10 years, you don't leave the walls. You don't ride out with the others. You don't hear the horns. You don't see the horizon. You wake before dawn, not because you're ordered to, but because your body no longer knows how to sleep past it. There's no battle to prepare for, no armor to wear, no enemy to imagine. Instead, you sit at a low table, inkstone to your right, brush in your hand. The lists arrive before the sun, carried by younger men who bow without looking up. You check them slowly, one by one. Weapons issued, arrows counted, guards assigned, rotations logged. Then you check again. Not because you don't trust the numbers, but because you know where small mistakes lead. You catch 3 this week. 1 miscounted halberd, 1 duplicated post, and a name that shouldn't be there anymore. He died last spring. You mark it out in red. Your hands grow used to paper. Your shoulders grow used to stillness. You stop watching the weather with the urgency you once did. Rain no longer means mud on your boots or rust on your blade. It just means quiet and a slower procession through the stone corridors. You begin to know the other clerks by the sound of their sandals, not their names. You hear gossip about distant skirmishes, about rice shipments lost to bandits, about lords who fell out of favor. But none of it reaches you. Your world is narrow, a single wing of the castle, a narrow window facing east, the smell of oil and old paper. Sometimes a bird lands on the sill. You don't move. You just watch it, as still as the spears you once carried. And when it flies off, you realize it brought more change to your day than most men do. You keep your swords, of course. They rest on a stand in the corner of your quarters, still wrapped in cloth, still untouched. Once a season, you unwrap them. You wipe the blades with oil. You test the balance. You stare at your reflection in the metal. You still recognize the shape of your eyes, but the lines around them have deepened. Your hair is thinner now. Your knees complain when you rise too fast, but your grip is firm. You could still draw quickly if you needed to. You just haven't needed to in a long time. Some days you wonder if the blade misses your hand, or if it too has grown used to silence. You rewrap it with care, not reverence, just habit. There are many things now that live only in habit. The younger guards sometimes ask you what it was like. The real service. The marches, the cold, the blood. You answer without details. Harder than it looked, you say, or louder than you'd expect. They smile like you've shared a joke, though you haven't. One of them says he wants to see battle before he turns 20. You nod, but say nothing. You remember wanting that too. Wanting something to test yourself against. Something to prove you weren't just going through the motions. But now the motions are all that remain. And they're enough. You return to the scrolls, to the stamps, to the endless checking and rechecking. The ink stains your fingers. The days blur. But the gates stay closed, and your name stays written on the roster. And for now, that's all anyone asks of you. After the age of 50, they give you land. Not because you asked for it, and not because you earned it through any single act. It's simply what happens. A gesture, a ritual, a transfer of use and title. The land is small, a slope near the edge of the province, with crooked furrows and a shrine half-eaten by ivy. It belonged to a cousin of your lord who died without heirs. Now it's yours, and with it, a title that means less than it sounds. You are still expected to appear when summoned, still expected to maintain arms, still expected to train the younger men, if asked. But mostly, you are left alone. For the first time in your life, there are no commands each morning, no uniforms to check, no horns. You wake and the silence is real. The soil is poor, but workable. You hire a tenant family to tend it, and they bow so deeply when you visit that it makes your neck ache in sympathy. Their children hide behind their mother's robes. Their eldest son offers you tea with shaking hands. You accept it without speaking. The farmhouse is low, always cold, always damp. But it is clean, and the garden behind it grows better than you expected. You bring your wife once, just once, and she spends the whole afternoon standing in the doorway, arms folded, saying nothing. On the way home, she does not speak, but in the weeks that follow, she sends jars of pickled plum and packets of dried fish to the tenants. You do not ask why. You don't need to. Silence is its own language now. The land doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you've seen. You walk the perimeter at dawn, and the earth underfoot is cracked with old roots. A fox crosses your path and doesn't look twice. The wind pushes at your sleeve like a child too shy to speak. You kneel beside the small stone altar near the north boundary and brush the leaves away with your hand. You don't remember the last time you prayed, not properly. But the motion returns easily. You press your palms together. You bow. You whisper something that sounds like a name, though it may not be. No one hears it. Not even you. The sun creeps higher, but you stay there a little longer. Your knees ache. You let them. The sword stays on the wall in your home. You do not carry it to the land. It would be foolish now. You are too old to draw quickly, and there is no one here to threaten you. No one here to challenge your title or your silence. Sometimes, when you are alone by the shrine, you think of the men who never lived long enough to have their own field, their own tired knees, their own cold mornings. You wonder if they would envy you or pity you, but the thoughts don't linger. They rise and fall like breath. The field doesn't know your rank. The wind doesn't ask your name. And for the first time in your life, that feels almost like peace. You are past 60 when the news reaches you. The Lord is dead, not murdered, not fallen in battle. He simply stopped breathing during a quiet evening meal. You hear it from a stable boy who is too young to understand the weight of what he says. But you understand. You bow your head, finish your duties, and walk home without a word. No one needs to tell you what happens next. You've seen it before. A retainer follows his master into death. It is not a punishment. It is not even grief. It is duty. A final act of loyalty. You begin preparing before the sun is down. You choose the place, you choose the clothing. You sharpen the blade yourself, though your hands are slower now. There is no ceremony, no crowd. Just you, your tools, and the quiet. You are not close to him. That's not how these things work. You served him for more than 30 years. You knew how he liked his records kept, how his banners were to be arranged, how his armor must be maintained before inspection. But you rarely spoke. You stood when he entered. You bowed when he passed. You followed when called. That was the nature of your bond. Not friendship, not affection, service. And now, as the one who served, your part is to follow him again. You sit in your storage room and untie the cords of your uniform. The robe you put on is clean but plain. You leave no message. Nothing needs to be said. Your son will understand. Your wife will not speak. Your name will be remembered on a quiet stone. That is all. You've rehearsed this moment more times than you can count. Not with words, but in silence. You practiced stillness, calm breathing, precise motion. You know how to hold the dagger. You know where to cut. You know when the pain will come. Your knees creak when you kneel. The ground beneath you is packed and cold. The candle trembles in the draft from the door. You place the blade before you, breathe once, twice, and raise your sleeves. And then footsteps, soft, fast, urgent. You do not look up. The door opens. A voice calls your name. It is not your son. It is not a servant. It is the new Lord, the dead man's son, still young, still clean-faced, still burning with something like kindness or fear. He tells you to stop. His voice breaks. He tells you he will not allow it, that he needs you, that your place is still here. You keep your hands still. You listen. You wait for him to change his mind. But he does not. He bows, low, too low, and repeats the words. He will not permit it. You are to stay. You are to serve him now, as you did his father. It is not a request. It is an order. You are bound to obey. So you lower your sleeves. You do not stand for a long time. When you finally do, your legs ache and your hands are cold. The blade is still there. You do not touch it. You walk out, slowly, into the narrow corridor, into the flickering light, and you nod to the boy who just became your new master. He nods back, grateful, nervous, uncertain. And you? You say nothing. You bow. You live. You no longer wear your armor. It rests in a lacquered chest, tucked behind the family shrine, untouched for years. Your swords were surrendered the day your service ended. You remember the feel of them, the weight against your side, the silent presence they gave you. Now, your hands fold into your sleeves. Your robe is old, patched in places where moths once found it. faded where your knees have pressed the fabric thin. The days pass slowly. You wake before dawn, not because you must, but because your body still does. You listen to the roosters, to the wind against the bamboo walls, to your own shallow breath. There is no urgency, no summons, no orders to obey. You sit beside the sliding door and wait for the world to begin. Your son stands in the courtyard, barking commands. His voice is sharper than yours ever was, more confident too. His son, your grandson, fumbles with the bokken, then tries again. You watch from the shadows, unseen but not unwelcome. There is no ceremony in what they do, just rhythm, motion, habit. Your grandson is smaller than you remember being at that age, softer perhaps, but he listens, he tries. He bows correctly, if a bit too quickly. He will learn. Your son corrects his grip, adjusts his stance, steps back. You see yourself in the boy's hesitation. You see yourself in your son's instruction. You do not interrupt. You have said all you needed to say years ago. Now your words are carried forward in theirs. Sometimes the villagers come with offerings, rice, pickled vegetables, a coil of incense. They remember you, or at least they remember the man you once were, a retainer, a soldier, a samurai. They bow deeply, more than necessary, and speak with reverence. You nod in return, grateful but uncomfortable. Their respect is for a memory, not for the old man hunched in the doorway. When they leave, you light the incense and offer it to the household gods. You do not pray for strength, or glory, or peace, only for endurance, for silence, for one more morning. The gods do not answer, but they listen, and that is enough. At night, you lie on a thin mat. Your back aches. Your knees throb. You do not complain. You sleep lightly, waking at every creak, every gust, every cough from your wife, who now grows as brittle as you. Sometimes your dreams carry you back to fields of banners and smoke, to the shouts of command, the bite of arrows, the weight of blood. But more often, your dreams are quiet, rice fields swaying, the smell of wet wood, the sound of your son's voice calling his own son to stand straighter. You are no longer the blade. You are the scabbard, empty but still present. And that, too, has meaning. You do not ask for more. You bow to the night, to the past, to the boy in the courtyard. And in the stillness, you remain.